This is Viterbi Voices.
Coming to you from the University of Southern California, Viterbi School of Engineering.
We're here to give you the inside scoop on research, classes, student life, and so much more.
All of these shared by students, faculty, alumni, and other members of the USC community. All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Viterbi Voices. For those of you repeat listeners to the podcast, unfortunately, I am not Paul. You've probably realized this by now. I am one of your co-hosts. My name is Maya Neuenschwander. I'm currently a senior studying industrial and systems engineering. And unfortunately, my other co-host, Paul, is not here on the podcast with me today. Don't worry. We will be back next week with another intro and outro full of banter and updates for you guys. But I wanted to hop on quickly and introduce the podcast for this next week. So this podcast is brought to you by Lucas. And Lucas is another senior studying industrial and systems engineering here at Viterbi. He's also actually from the Midwest as well. So he's from Chicago. Actually, he's from a suburb of Chicago. So we've definitely bonded over both being from the Midwest, being in the same major. He's one of my good friends here at USC, and I am very excited for you guys all to hear his episode today. He is interviewing Peyton and Mitch, who are current Viterbi students, different grades, and they're talking about their experiences with housing at USC. So they'll detail their specific experiences. I know I was definitely laughing when Mitch was talking about his unique mega bed experience. I won't spoil too much, but I think it's a great episode for prospective students to understand more about housing at USC, what that looks like, and just the different varieties that are offered here. I think Peyton, Lucas, and Mitch all have unique examples of what that looks like, and it's not the same for everyone, so I think it's a good sample to get a good taste of it. All right, and the last thing before we get into this episode, I wanted to mention that we will not be joining you on the back end of this episode, but we'll see you back next week for another episode of Viterbi Voices. So without further ado, enjoy the episode, and I'll let Lucas take it over.
Awesome. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome back, or welcome to our session here after the intro. I'm here with two more VSAs, Mitchell Kirby.
Hello, everyone.
And then Peyton Erickson.
Hi, everyone.
So really quick, we'll just kind of go around and do quick introductions of ourselves. You already heard mine in the intro, but they can introduce themselves, what they do at school, what their majors are, and then we'll get into talking about some housing stuff. So Mitchell, you want to go first?
Yeah, of course. Hey guys, I'm Mitch Kirby. I'm from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I'm a civil engineer with an environmental emphasis. Outside of VSA, I'm involved in Makers, which is a year-long project where we have a team and put some stuff together, and a couple other small orgs on campus.
And hey, everybody, my name is Peyton. I'm a current senior studying mechanical engineering here at USC. I'm also doing the progressive degree program, so I'll be doing my master's in mechanical engineering as well. On campus, I'm also involved with Makers with Mitch, and I'm on the officer council for the Society of Women Engineers, and then some fun play club soccer here, and I'm on the ski team.
Awesome. All right, well, thanks, guys. And as we've kind of said so far, we're here today to talk about housing. Yay, super fun. So for everybody who's listening, who may or may not, go to campus on USC or live at USC, we're going to kind of talk through the different housing options. There's a lot of different ways that you can choose to live at USC, whether that's through USC sponsored housing, or a million other different like apartments and that kind of complexes that you can live in, houses, that kind of thing. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go kind of year by year, talking about our different living experiences, kind of showcasing the different ways that you can live at USC, noting the ups and the downs. And hopefully if you're looking for housing at some point, if you're, still a student or you're a prospective student, you can get an idea of kind of what the housing looks like around here. So I think we'll start with the youngest. We'll let Mitch go. He's the sophomore. He's the youngest of this group. And you want to tell us a little bit about what your freshman year housing was looking like?
Yeah, I'll look back to long ago, last year when I was a freshman. I was fortunate enough to live in the Village for last year, and this year is where I currently live. I was in Kale and Arani. And it was kind of an interesting setup because Kale and Arani is kind of a part of, like I said, the Village complex, and it's all usually sophomores, but there's one floor of freshmen. I heard that it used to be 2 or 3 floors in Kale, but last year it was just one of us. So it was kind of just me and a couple other people, and then like football, lacrosse, baseball, like it was kind of like an athletics floor. So I'm very grateful for whoever my distant relative is that put me in there because I didn't even choose it because I know when you have like the freshman like housing portal thing, your 5 preferences, and mine was like I think Burncrant, which is one of the freshman housing, and then maybe like Parkside and then Kale. And I got in Kale because I filled the form out like the second it came out for housing. So it was nice. It had air conditioning. It was like an apartment layout, so it's similar to what I have now. It's like a kitchen, a living room, a bedroom, a bathroom. No communal bathrooms, thank God. I started the year off too with just myself. I don't really know what happened there. It was kind of like there was like a vacancy, so I had the room, no roommates. And then around September, I got my first roommate, and then we got my other friend came in around November.
That's kind of interesting. You like started out alone. That's kind of, I don't know if that's cool or not. I can't decide.
I had a mega desk. It was great. I had all 3 desks pushed together because it was a 3-person loft. So that was the only unfortunate part of it is it was like a kind of a tiny situation because it was like a bunk bed. So it was me and then there was a bed above me. Then my other roommate had a desk and then his bed was above his desk. But when no one was there, I had everything pushed together, huge bed, huge couch, huge desk. It was excellent.
That's awesome.
That is
Um,
awesome.
Yeah, and so for our listeners that aren't super acquainted, your freshman year, after you get accepted to USC, they send you a bunch of stuff on housing, and then you rank your preferences in order of where you would want to live. And as a freshman, there's pretty much only 2 real choices. It's either you can live on campus in some of like the dorm style housing, which, as Mitch was like kind of alluding to, communal bathrooms, small rooms, what you would think of as a typical college dorm. And then where people often find the more desirable place to live is in the Village. And so that's just off campus on the north, kind of by the Target and the Trader Joe's. And most of those buildings are new. They're apartment style rooms, so there's no communal bathrooms, like Mitch was saying. And the facilities are somewhat newer because they were just built like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, something like that. So that's generally the more where people would like to live. That's where I lived my sophomore year. But before we get into that, Peyton had more, I think, of a traditional freshman experience in terms of her living situation. So
Yeah, depending on how you look at it, unfortunate, fortunate. I lived in dorms, so I got like the true dorm style experience where you're in a double communal bathroom. There was about like 30 girls that shared my bathroom. At USC, there's different co-ed buildings. Like my building was co-ed, but each floor was like girls, guys, girls, guys. New North is kind of all mixed in. It'll be like a girls' hallway and a guys' hallway, but it's all a little more like fluid over there. But my building had separate floors, so I shared a bathroom with 30 different girls. It was surprisingly very clean. I think it got cleaned
nice.
so frequently, and no one was ever in there at the same time. I would maximum see like 1 or 2 people or 3 people maybe there at max at a time. So it wasn't like a super big inconvenience. I think the hardest thing was, if you're in bed ready to go to sleep and you need to go to the bathroom, you gotta put your shoes on, walk down the whole hallway, go to the bathroom. But there's something fun about, everyone moving in together and all the doors are open and you're walking in saying hi to everybody. But to go with that too, I think one of my favorite memories about living in the dorms was the dining halls. Like sometimes, yeah, the food sucks and you get over having dining hall food. But I feel like it was a pretty good variety at USC. And with the 3 different dining halls, you could almost always find something that you wanted. And you met so many people there. Like as freshmen, everyone comes in, you don't know anyone. And so I think all the dining halls are super open to everyone coming up and being like, hey, I'm so and so. Can I sit and eat lunch or dinner with you? And so I made a lot of friends that way too, which was fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's cool that it was super clean. I've never heard that about a dorm before. Generally,
Yeah,
I think I've heard that dorms are pretty messy. So
I know. I think I had a really chill dorm, which was awesome. Like I went in some of the New North bathrooms and those were disgusting. But my floor, no one ever threw like any get-togethers or anything. And so it was always like very clean, which was really nice.
yeah, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
for our listeners that might not know, New North is kind of it's I guess stereotyped to be the more social of the dorms
Hmm.
on campus. So New North and then Burncrant and Marks and I think Party. I think those are the 4 main dorms that are on campus, and then there's other like kind of apartment style buildings throughout campus as well. And if anybody who's listening has questions about specific buildings that they can't find online, you can feel free to reach out to us on the Viterbi Voices website or contact us in any way to ask questions. But
Totally.
I think that's go ahead.
No, sorry. I was gonna say
No,
on
you're good.
topic of freshman housing too, I know it's kind of scary when you're ranking your preferences. And I just want everyone listening, if you're like a prospective student or you just got admitted, that I have friends that lived in like all the housing styles. And everyone like has a great experience where they end up. And I think there's like pros and cons to all of them. Like Mitch got the apartment style, which had a lot of friends in that loved it, didn't have to share the bathrooms. Other people were in the more social dorms and had a blast, or mine, which was a little bit quieter, which I also loved. So I think it's kind of scary when you just start ranking your preferences, but I think go with your gut and it'll work out.
Yeah, and also you like can make a balance of it with like your friends because like my good friends all lived in New Northwestern, so like you could spend all your time over there and like make friends in like a very social atmosphere, and then like go back to wherever you are. Like you only have to sleep in your dorm. You don't have to actually like live your whole life there.
That's what I was like too, which was a perfect balance.
Yeah, it's awesome. So I'm super jealous of these guys. For our listeners, my freshman year was COVID year, so I was, instead of in a nice dorm in Southern California, excuse me, I was stuck in my basement in cold Chicago for an entire year. So not as much fun, not as much to talk about on my end for freshman year, but from what I've heard, you really can't go wrong. I mean, you'll have a great experience either way. It's just kind of what experience you want, whether you want the clean and the place to yourself kind of apartment style, a little bit quieter, or whether you want to go to the dorms where, you take your chances of it being kind of loud and unruly around you and kind of messy, but at the same time it's more social. And like Mitch said, you can always kind of go back and stay at your own place and then go make friends at some of the other dorms. And that's pretty nice. They've got an open door policy now. So instead of, freshman year, I did sophomore year, and I actually lived in the village just like Mitch did. I was in Cowlings and Ilium, which is the building that's right above Trader Joe's. And again, I was there. This is kind of during the back end of COVID, so it was my sophomore year, and they still had a lot of restrictions out. So it was somewhat annoying because you couldn't bring as many people back to your room. That's all kind of gone out the window now. You can have guests now, and it's a little bit more of you're more able to be social. But I loved living in the village, again, kind of for all the reasons that I mentioned earlier. It's clean, it's nice. I was right above the Trader Joe's and the Target, so I could go get food whenever I wanted. You're right near campus, which a lot of the off-campus housing that we might talk about here in a little bit, you're not as close to campus anymore. Once you're an upperclassman and you're trying to get, your own apartment, your own house that's not sponsored by USC, you have to start going further and further away from campus, and that's not as much fun to get to classes and that kind of thing. The other thing to note about the village buildings that they all have like study rooms that you can go into. So like right across the hall, there was like a giant study room. So I would like go take phone calls in there or just like go get some work done in there. So that's pretty nice too. So overall, I loved living in the village. I look back on it and I was like, dang, I didn't take that. I took it for granted when I was there. I didn't appreciate it as much as I could. And then just a couple other options that we haven't really talked about yet for kind of freshman, sophomore living. Once you're a sophomore, people generally tend to want to stay with USC housing. So, trying to get a spot in the village, but the village can be kind of difficult to get a spot in. I know Mitch was saying that he got a spot his second year in the village too, which is nice. But some of the other options.
In Cowlings right now, where you were.
Oh, you're in college. Awesome.
Yeah.
And do you have any friends in Century or at Cargar that you wanna kind of talk about their situation?
Yeah, I do. That's like kind of right across the street from the village for reference for everyone. Cardinal Gardens, and then right next behind that is Century. They're kind of similar in the sense that they're an apartment style, but they're just a little bit older. They're not as new as the village. They're very close to everything too, so that's kind of convenient as opposed to other options like Lucas was saying, like farther away from campus. But they're just not as big. Because Cowlings is, I think, the biggest residential college we have here. So, like, even on top of being really nice, there's like 800 people, I think, that could live in this building. So it's like you still meet a lot of people, and there's community events like with RAs and stuff like that. and we have like our community council for each housing unit, and they always have a budget to throw events so you can meet people like pizza socials and stuff like that. So those are just nice little things that like are intertwined within housing. And I'm not so sure as to if Century, I think Cardinal Gardens has that option then where they have like RAs and they have like little events, but I don't know if Century does, and some of those other apartment style things that get farther from campus.
Yeah, totally. On USC's website, they list these are all kind of complexes that are USC sponsored housing, right? So they do have the RAs. They're still sponsored by the school. You can just sign up for a single semester. It's a little bit easier to deal with as opposed to the other kind of off-campus apartments that aren't sponsored by USC. Those are going to be further away, and you got to deal with kind of leases and landlords. And so it's a little bit more complicated. There's a bunch of different options, though, right? You can kind of live. Generally, the two most popular are living on the north side of campus and then living on the west side of campus, with the west side being a little bit cheaper, but it's a little bit further away from the social scene of the school. And people, it's South Central Los Angeles, so there are worries about danger. We've got Yellow Jackets and USC people patrolling every block within 5 or 6 blocks of the school. So nothing to be too worried about, but that's definitely something that people do have concerns about. They like to live kind of up where everybody else is on the north side, but the west side has some nice options too. Peyton, do you want to go ahead and talk about your junior year kind of living off campus experience?
Yeah, totally.
Go for it.
Before I get to junior year, I know Mitch and Lucas have thrown out the word RA a couple times, and I've never been familiar with what an RA was before I came to college, which is a residential advisor. So I haven't had one in like 3 years, but they're in the USC housing. And I'm sure, Mitch, maybe you can talk a little bit more about like what an RA does or your relationship with your residential advisor.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate you clarifying that because I probably wouldn't have known what that is either, but now I just take it for granted. Our RAs, and I have a bunch of my friends are RAs actually, because once you're a sophomore, you could be one and go back and live in USC housing. It's a pretty good deal too, because you get, I think, the housing paid for, and you get the meal plan, which is like unlimited food swipes, which is really nice. We don't get that anymore. Once you're on the apartment plan, like your sophomore year, you only have like 40 meal swipes for the semester versus freshman meal plan is you get like infinite, and it's kind of nice. Like you were saying, you just hop in, get a water, say hi to someone, and then hop out. But our RAs are very like more on the chiller end because like we're sophomores now and like they're kind of the same age as us. And it's just to check in, make sure everyone's okay. Like I said, they host little events just for people to get to know each other, but they're kind of just here in case you need anything on a practical level, like someone to talk to, or more of like a diplomatic level of like even if you have issues with your roommates, they're the person you can go to like arbitrate that kind of stuff. But we've never really needed that, fortunately, in my situations. But I know that some people have taken advantage of them, and they're a very helpful resource because you sign like a roommate contract just to make sure everyone's on the same page. If you have any qualms about like living with, people you met, because I know when coming to freshman year, you might just meet people online to like room with or go random. There's a lot of structure in place to make sure that that goes smoothly. And if not, you could like reassign. You can go to them and talk about getting a reassignment plan to another housing unit. And then there's like a whole like pyramid of levels. There's the RA, there's like the graduate student that lives in every housing building that coordinates all these events. And then there's even faculty that live within some of the buildings. I think there's one guy that lives here in Cowlings. He's a professor. And so there's kind of like a micro community within each building.
That's awesome. Talking about the meal swipes, that just unlocked an old memory. I used to swipe in to get soft serve ice cream on the unlimited meal swipes. That was great. Yeah, and the RAs too also have shift, like they'll work in shifts through all the RAs across the building or across like multiple dorms, that someone's always on call. So if something happens and like you need help and it's kind of a weird hour, there's always kind of like an emergency line that you can get a hold of, which is really cool. But yeah, back to junior housing, as Lucas asked me. I lived in an apartment off campus called the Lorenzo, which is a little far, but there's like a shuttle that takes you kind of to and from campus. It's about like 1.5 miles from campus, which sounds pretty close. But when you're in like a city, I feel like every inch counts. But it was actually really fun living there. There was like 3 different pools, a gym, a rock wall, like a bunch of hot tubs. So there's a lot of amenities. So I enjoyed living there. I had a group of friends that also lived there. So I feel like there was a kind of a little community we had, which is kind of a hot take. Sometimes people like don't like living there. Everyone has different experiences at every apartment complex, but I think that one hosts around 3,000 USC students. So when you just have that many quantity of people staying somewhere, there's always going to be people that are displeased or happy. So I happen to fall on the enjoyment side of that.
Yeah, that's super. I mean, so I went to visit Peyton a couple times while she was living at the Zoo. It's, colloquially referred to as the Zoo, the Lorenzo. But I was there and it's beautiful. Like you walk in and you're like, dang, people actually live here compared to my, somewhat not as nice apartment that's above campus. But at the same time, it is a little bit far. So that's kind of the trade-off that you make of further from campus, you kind of have to take the shuttle or have like a scooter or a bike or something. But at the same time, you kind of get more amenities and a little bit of a nicer place to stay. So it's a pretty common choice for people to go to the Lorenzo, at least in their sophomore and junior years. And then people tend to try and get a little bit closer to campus for senior year. Personally, I lived at the Shrine collection my junior year. So there's a collection of different apartments that are pretty close to campus. And the downside is that they're somewhat expensive and they are, again, not as nice of apartments, right? We had like a bug problem there once, and there's a little bit more because it's a little bit more, it's less closed in. Like the Lorenzo is kind of a massive like apartment complex that's closed in and it's got all this security, whereas the Shrine apartments, there's obviously a locked door or whatever, but there's no front office, right? It's an apartment building that you just walk into. So you wake up every once in a while to something, some racket going on outside or something like that. But for the most part, I genuinely enjoyed my stay at the Shrine. Like I said, it was super close to campus, which was nice. Lived with a few roommates. I had to share a room, but that's kind of what happens if you want to stay within a certain price range at USC. And yeah, living near campus definitely has its perks, right? It's going to be more expensive, but getting to and from class that easily is something that I, again, realized that I took for granted back when I lived so close, right? I live a little bit further now, and it's not as much fun. But I don't know, Mitch, do you have any idea where you're going to be living next year? How close you're going to be?
Yeah, I'm gonna be kind of in a similar vicinity. I have a question real quick. How was living at Shrine with the Shrine concert hall right there? Did you ever have any hearing? Like, did you ever hear any of the concerts going on?
Yeah, so that's kind of one of the cool things is the Shrine Concert Hall, for everybody who doesn't know, is like right down the street from this Shrine collection of apartment buildings. And it's a pretty, common venue for artists to play at. Like I went and I saw Ed Sheeran play there like 6 months ago or something like that. So it's pretty cool. They get some pretty big artists. I'd say that if you're driving, the traffic is kind of annoying because like people will be coming down your street to get to and from the concerts, once or twice a week during the summer, like the summertime-ish months, right? So until like, November-ish. But the noise itself was never that big of a deal. You could hear it a little bit, which honestly I thought was kind of cool because I'm a concert person. But like if you wanted to go to sleep, it wasn't going to keep you up. That was never really the issue. The only issue that I had with the Shrine was that we had these courtyards out back that, all of the rooms kind of faced into one of these courtyards. And every once in a while you'd have somebody who threw a party until 2 a.m. and be playing loud music in the courtyard. Inevitably somebody would call DPS or the campus police and tell them to come down and shut down the party because it's 2 a.m. and we have class the next day, right? So kind of like living in the dorms, right? You have to deal with people and their noise, but overall, I'd say it was definitely a great place to stay. And I'm actually I'm taking another semester because I'm finishing up a master's degree as well, the PDP program. I know we did another podcast on that earlier, so if you're interested in getting that master's, you can go check out our PDP podcast. But I'm thinking about living at the Shrine one more time for one last semester with my friends, just because it was so close. I mean, it's expensive, which is the issue, but at the end of the day, the proximity to campus is something that can't be rivaled. So
You can't beat that. I mean,
yeah.
I think where you live also dictates what transportation you use. If like the farther you get, like the more you invest in like a bike, like an electric scooter or something. I currently use a longboard, but next year like I said, I'm kind of living close. I'm living at the Icon Plaza, which is kind of on the southeast corner of campus. So like right on our corner there, like once you're going towards the Coliseum, if you're looking at a map, there's like a Starbucks and like a Chipotle, and it's kind of on Figueroa Street, and then I'm on the corner right there. So it's directly across from campus. So that's gonna be really nice. It's kind of at the back corner. So I kind of still have to make my way across for most of my classes over on like the engineering side and get up to the village. But with a longboard and stuff, you could do that in like 3 or 5 minutes. And then, I mean, with a bike or like in a scooter, you could do that really fast too. But I've kind of going in here blind. We had our friend's mom sign this lease for us over like Thanksgiving. So, and then we kind of all hopped in. There's going to be four of us. We're each getting a single, which is nice. It's the first time I'll get to have my own room um, here at school. So I'm kind of pumped for that. We have like a balcony apparently. I've never seen this place, so I can't wait to go check it out when I August.
Well, I got some
from what I've heard
Go
is from what I've heard, Icon is awesome.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. I heard it's really, really beautiful and very nice and new.
We got a washer and dryer in unit.
the things you get excited about as a college student.
Yeah, I know,
seriously.
right? It's like being a full-grown adult, but on a student salary. And then we have a kitchen in the living room, and there's 2 bathrooms for us to share. But it's like a high-rise unit for those who aren't familiar. And so I'm hoping that we have like a nice like balcony facing outward, because it's kind of like a square. Most of these apartment buildings are like squares, and you have inward facing rooms and then outward facing ones. And like right now in Callings, like the sophomore housing we're talking about, my window right here is looking into the courtyard. So everyone has a window. Like, don't worry, you're not gonna be in the dark anywhere, but it's whether you face in or out.
Yeah. And you generally want to face out. It's generally nicer to face out than to face into the courtyard, unless you like want to spy on your friends all the time.
It's fun. It's fun too, because if you're high up, you can see like the downtown skyline. Like living at the Lorenzo, we'd go like up on the rooftop, and then you could just see the whole like downtown skyline at night. It was really cool. But having your own room, I have my own room now as a senior, and it was a game changer. Even though I've shared rooms with like my best friends, I think it's so nice to have like a big space for you. But I was similar, Mitch. Like we signed a lease last year for our place right now, and I couldn't make the tour, so I literally hadn't seen it, and my roommates loved it, both been in it, like it's awesome. So I was interning last summer, and I think my internship ended like 6 days before I had to be at school, moved in, and so I had no furniture. I had to fully furnish an apartment that I've never stepped foot in, as I was like moving down from the Bay Area to LA. But it worked out great and we love it. But yeah, the no seeing it moving in, you'll be fine. I know it's kind of scary, but
no, I'm looking forward to it. Also, you have a very nice place. I've been over there just to check it out, and I think you guys did very good for that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I know they did such an awesome job. They went and they called me the second they left, and they're like, "We're getting this. We have to get it. It's perfect. We promise. We know you haven't seen it, but it's perfect." Okay.
Well, and that's the thing though for our audience too, is that that's pretty common, because the issue is that housing goes so fast around here. Like once you're doing off-campus housing, it's almost impossible to get what you want. So you kind of have to just take a leap of faith sometimes. We also did the same thing with my current house. None of us had toured it, and we just had to put a down payment down and cross our fingers. And I'm currently living pretty far away. So like Mitch was saying, kind of that mode of transportation. I always used to skateboard to class, and now I live up by Ralph's, the grocery store, which isn't that far, but it's to the point where it's like a solid 15-minute skateboard to the opposite end of campus. And I was like feeling it in my knee last semester. I was like feeling my knee start to go just because I was like doing the same motion over and over again. I'm like, crap, can I get like skateboarder's knee or something? Is that like a thing? But no, so it's, knowing what you want to do, whether you want to get a bike or a scooter. A lot of people have electric scooters. That's super important too. But just in general, when you're choosing your housing, that leap of faith is sometimes important, and you just gotta kind of toss a coin and pray that you get the right room. I'm trying to think of any other housing options that we haven't talked about. One thing I will say is if you're in Greek life, a lot of people tend to live at the fraternities or the sororities. That's an option that's cheaper for a lot of people, but at the same time, just like in a dorm, you run the risk of it being very loud, hard to study, it not being as clean. At least in the fraternity side of things. I think the sororities are a little bit cleaner. But
yeah, I will say my friends who live in the sorority houses, I would say you'll never run the risk of it being not clean.
Yeah.
Or like loud. They're very good about their like living standards, and I would recommend.
Yeah. Oh, and the thing is that both of those options too, you get food. So they provide you with food at least 5 days a week, probably. And so that's a nice upside of that as well, if you decide you want to go through the fraternity or sorority route while you're at school here. I'll say that I lived in a fraternity house just for a summer, just because it was really cheap for a summer. So if you're looking for summer housing, that's like, I think it was like $700 a month. Like that's a pretty nice way to do it. But again, it's not going to be clean, and especially in the summer, there's nobody there to take care of it. So you're kind of on your own a little bit. But that's the price you pay for getting a cheap single in the middle of Los Angeles for the summer, right? Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh no, I was gonna say, yeah, touching too like on senior housing a little bit more before we wrap up. There's so many different styles of senior housing around here. Like there's apartments that we've talked about, but in terms of just houses, like me and Lucas both live in a house. So my house is like one big unit. I guess it would be kind of like a duplex, and there's 4 units inside it. So they kind of like split up this big old house, and there's like 4 different units with their own entrances. Whereas like Lucas lives in a huge house where they didn't split it up. And so there's some houses around here that sleep 10, 12 people. And then others that like I have 2 other roommates. So there's 3 of us. But I think there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 13 total in this house, technically, but everyone has their own like entrance, their own kitchen, own bathroom, living room, that whole thing.
Totally. Yeah, and like Peyton was saying, so there's 7 of us that are living in this house right now, and realistically, there could probably be 9. I think 2 of these rooms could be doubles if you wanted them to be. They're pretty big. But by senior year, you've got like a group of people that you want to live with, and it's kind of hard to find a big enough house. So that was one of the things, like I said, we had to just take our leap of faith because this was like the last house on the market that had room for 7 people to sleep in. And I loved it so far. The only thing that I'll say is that it did not come with a dishwasher. And oh my God, that has been horrible. It's been the worst thing ever. Don't ever get an apartment or anywhere without a dishwasher. I mean, if it's like 2 people, maybe you'd be okay. But with 7 guys living in the same house and not having a dishwasher, it has been somewhat of a nightmare. So, and like that kind of goes with, choosing your roommates and that kind of thing, which, I guess is tangentially related to what we're talking about, but making sure that your roommates are going to live the way that you want to live and not just like some of your best friends, because it's cool to live with some of your best friends. If you get in fights over roommate stuff, that's not as much fun, right? So just kind of making sure that everybody's got those expectations set. And then we kind of have also talked about food, so I'll just briefly recap that. Freshman year, generally you're on like a pretty large meal plan. That's relatively expensive, but at the same time, it allows you to just get unlimited swipes into the dining halls, which is really nice. Sophomore year, you can stay on that meal plan or kind of go into a smaller one, in which case you're gonna have to start, eating out a little bit more, doing your own grocery shopping. And then generally by junior or senior year, people are off the meal plan entirely, and they start kind of, either eating a lot at restaurants or fast food, which I unfortunately do probably too often, or you go to Trader Joe's or Ralph's or any of the grocery stores, Target, and you get food and you kind of learn to be an adult a little bit more, which has been an interesting part of this semester. I feel like I've all of a sudden been teaching myself to cook. I don't know if Peyton can relate, or Mitch, if you've been cooking in the village.
We're trying. It's not really happening.
Yeah, I think I've had a kitchen the past 3 years that I've lived places, so that's been nice. But the first year, yeah, it's like gotta figure out how to cook your meals. I think the Trader Joe's meals really come in clutch there. But yeah, it's kind of fun. Like I think the housing here every year kind of seems like it brings a new experience. Like you get the freshman year that we talked about, and then like sophomore, most people are in the village or kind of still around campus. Junior year, people kind of spread out a little bit more. Senior as well. So it's kind of unique to get. I think every experience is valuable. And so if I had to like pinpoint my favorite place I've lived, I love living like north end of campus where I am right now. We're about 5 minutes from campus, so pretty close. And it's just like a really fun area to live. But I would say that I had a lot of fun too as a freshman, and that was like a unique experience in its own.
Yeah, totally. I guess we can do favorites. For me, I have loved living in the house that I'm in the senior year. But I'm a little bit further from campus than I'd like to. I think generally the Shrine was my favorite place to live, just in terms of housing. It wasn't as nice of a building, but that proximity to campus, like I said, it can't be matched. And then that north side of campus, kind of like right around the village, is where generally a lot of your friends will end up staying or being. That's where a lot of people end up living. And so, just being that close to my friends, being that close to all of the fast food on Figueroa whenever I wanted it, which, being that close to the gym and everything in the village and then campus, I think that was probably the best spot to live. Again, that was a little bit expensive, so that's kind of how it balances out. But that was probably my favorite for sure. And Mitch, I don't think we need to ask your favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I like
building or the other village building.
either this one or the one right across from it. So this one's pretty nice.
But totally, like Peyton was saying, like everything's got a unique experience. It's good to get all of those different experiences. It's kind of like something that Mitch and I were talking before we started, which is that, as you kind of grow up through college, you go through different like phases of like where you go, where you hang out, where you shop, how much you work out, that kind of thing, right? And it's kind of cool because where you live kind of impacts that phase of your life a little bit in each way, and you get a little bit more of a personality of the place that you lived in that year of school, which is kind of fun. It adds to the story. So with that, I think, unless you guys have anything else to say, I think it's a decent place to wrap it up. You guys both good?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to go back to our outro with, I think it'll be Paul and Maya. But thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you later. And then thanks to Mitch and Peyton.